Hi, I'm Kevin. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I make clarified butter. When I'm on a backcountry camping trip, either backpacking or canoe tripping, I'm usually bringing along dehydrated meals because they don't require any refrigeration. Unfortunately, when I prepare those meals, to make them last longer, I try and remove as much fat as possible. That's great, but you really miss the fatty taste in your meal. So what I usually do is bring along olive oil, and I'll add that to my meal after it's rehydrated. Another option you have, though, is clarified butter. Clarified butter, if prepared properly, will last a very long time without refrigeration, easily 3 months. And it has some advantages over oil. It tastes very different, and it's easy to spread. Butter contains milk solids, water, and milk fat. We're going to melt down some butter and separate those until we have just nice pure milk fat or clarified butter. So we're going to start by heating up a pan and putting 1 pound of unsalted butter in it. And over time we'll let this melt. And if you're impatient like me, you can jab it with a spoon a few times, break it up, speed up the process. But eventually the butter will melt on its own. So after the butter has melted, we're going to bring it to a slow simmer. You're going to want to leave the temperature down to low or medium low and just let this simmer slowly. You should start to see small bubbles emerging and floating to the surface. This normally takes about 20 minutes, but we're going to speed it up a little bit. What's happening here is that the water is boiling off and turning into a vapor and leaving the pot. And the white substance that's forming on the top is some of the milk solids. Some of the solids are floating to the top and some are sinking to the bottom. So what we're going to do is use a spoon to skim off the milk solids from the top. And we'll discard those. We're going to keep this pot on a low simmer until the butter stops boiling. And I'm going to continue skimming off milk solids every once in a while. After 15 or so minutes, the butter is going to start to look a lot more clear, and you'll see the milk solids that are sinking to the bottom. We're going to keep simmering this until all the water has evaporated out of the butter. I've switched tools here to help me do a bit better job of skimming the surface, and as I do that you can see that some of the milk solids that drop to the bottom of the pot are actually browning a little bit. That's okay. So the heat is still on here, but the pot has stopped boiling because all the water has evaporated. When that happens, you're done. So what difference, if any, is there between ghee, which is a clarified butter that's made in India, and clarified butter? I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're basically the same thing. There is an argument to be made that ghee is a little bit different because it's cooked a little bit longer. The milk solids on the bottom of the pan are left to brown, and that gives a nuttier taste to the ghee. But I've watched some Indian chefs make ghee, and they're following essentially the same process I am. It's really hard not to cook the milk solids until they're a little bit brown. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that ghee and clarified butter are essentially the same thing. So I found that clarified butter made from 1 pound of butter should fit inside a 500 milliliter jar. And our last step here is to filter out the milk solids. So I'm going to use a funnel and a coffee filter, and we're going to pour the melted butter through the coffee filter, and only the milk fat will fall through the filter. All the milk solids should get caught by the coffee filter. Cheesecloth will also work for this, or you can even use just a really fine mesh strainer. The filtering process does take a little while, but be patient. Soon you'll be rewarded with a nice clear jar of clarified butter. Left out at room temperature, this will solidify, and there you have it, clarified butter. So clarified butter is a little bit different than butter. It tastes a little bit richer, so you don't really need to add as much when you're cooking. It's got a higher smoking point too, which means that you can cook at higher temperatures before it starts to burn. And lactose is a milk solid, and we've removed all those. So anyone who's lactose intolerant and can't eat butter, often those people can actually eat clarified butter with no problems. So I've said that clarified butter will last a long time if left unrefrigerated, and that's true. My one caution, though, is that you don't let moisture inside this container, because moisture will cause it to spoil very quickly. So you don't want to put a wet spoon or wet knife inside the container that you're using. So now that you know how easy it is to make clarified butter, I hope you make some and bring it along on your next trip. Have a great day, guys. That's a pine grosbeak.